A few days ago I posted just a picture of these cute little stamped faux slides, I guess they're called, and I had a few people ask me for the tutorial, so I thought I would quickly show you how I made these today. And I have to be honest, this is not my original idea. I saw it somewhere. I don't remember where I saw it, so I apologize, but I have had fun making these, and I think they'll make some cute little additions to junk journals and art journals. So let me quickly show you how I made these. So the person that I saw making these, I think, used napkins. I'm actually going to try to use a Kleenex here. So either way, you want to pull it apart so that you're only working with one ply of material. And then you're also going to need some rubber stamps. I got these at Dollar Tree, and they're kind of, I don't know, I haven't bought that many stamps in my life, but I was kind of impressed with the options. So I'm going to choose a few of these to stamp onto my onto my Kleenex here. I don't have a stamping block or whatever. I'm not even sure if I'm using the right term. So I'm just going to use this plastic container that I have. So the first thing I want to do is just put my stamp on there, grab my stamp pad. I think I asked a few weeks ago too whether or not people like to do junk journaling, and a lot of you actually said you didn't know what it was. So I was a little surprised by that, but if you haven't tried it, it's a really fun and easy thing to get started with. You can just use scraps and all kinds of things. My ink pad is really dry here. Hopefully this will work. But if you haven't tried junk journaling, I did a whole series on how to get started with it. If you don't have a lot of supplies, you don't even need a journal. You can make your own using junk mail catalogs. So if you're interested in that series, I will link to that in the description. So one thing you need to do with this is you need to allow a lot of room around your stamp. So I'm just going to put 4 stamps on this particular piece. Okay, we're going to have to try that again because that did not work. I normally have used my fingers, but it's just so messy. But I think it might work better. So we'll try it this way. And if you're doing this, you probably want a better ink pad than what I have here. Like I said, it's really dried out. I like using my fingers because you can actually kind of press down all over the stamp rather than relying on it just pressing flat with your block. That turned out quite a bit better, so I'll try this guy again. It's not perfect, but it'll work. Let's do one other guy here. Let's do the bumblebee. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to set up a little bit of protection for my table so I can do some ironing. So this is my setup here. I have a cookie sheet, then I have a little towel. I like to use a bit of parchment paper too on top just so I have a flatter surface. And then I have some parchment paper here because I want a non-stick surface. So I'm going to go ahead and put my Kleenex or napkin here. And then I'm going to use a paring knife. And I just have a little bit of wax from a tea light. And I'm just going to cut it up carefully and put a few little bits of that on each of my stamps. This is a little bit messy, but kind of want to just make sure you have all of your wax on top of your stamp, not spread out everywhere. And I've got my iron on about a medium heat. You can test it and see what works best for you. You probably don't need it on super high, but you do want it to melt fairly quickly. So I've got another piece of parchment paper that I'm just going to put on top of my stamps, and I'm not sure if my iron's quite hot enough yet, but we'll test it out here. It might need a minute or two, but it's starting to melt. And you want to make sure you've covered your whole stamp, and then you also want to make sure that the wax spreads out far enough for you to have a square kind of shape to frame it. Might want to let it cool just for a minute before you take the parchment paper off. And then I'll just do my next shape the same way. This Kleenex might be a little more delicate than the napkin. I don't know, you might be better off with a napkin. I think it's going to work, but it seems a little more flimsy. So here's what I'm talking about with the wax. You want the wax to spread out enough so that when you frame it, the whole thing has wax on it. And I think I'm okay. This one might not have gone. No, I think it's all right. All right. So I'm going to let that cool off just a little bit more. And then I'm just using a little bit of cardstock to make my frames. I just have these pieces of white cardstock. So you can use a ruler to measure out the shape, but I'm just using this as a template so I can sketch my frames out without having to measure anything. You probably don't have to use cardstock. You could use fancy papers if you wanted to do that instead, but I just like the black and white together, so I'm going to use my X-Acto knife to carefully cut along my lines here. I got this with my Cricut cutting machine, and man, is it sharp. Which is good, but be careful. I'm not following my lines very well. You can do a better job. All right. Because this has wax all over it, I wasn't sure how well it would attach to my frames. So I'm using some Dollar Tree mounting tape, and I'm just going to put it all the way around the edge of my frame. And then I can attach my napkin to it in a second here. You could try other adhesives if you want to. I don't know. Seems like the wax could be a little bit tricky. And depending on how secure you need it, you can attach all the way around the edges or just in a few spots here like I'm doing. So once you have all your tape on your frame, you can go ahead and just pull off this plastic backing. So once you have all the backing off the tape, you can go ahead and just frame out your stamp. You should probably wash your hands before you work with the white paper. And then I just go back with my scissors and trim as close to the tape as I can get. You could try tearing it, that might work too. But it's pretty easy just to get your scissors underneath there and get the napkin a little bit shorter than the frame so it won't show from the right side. And that's all there is to it. You can make them bigger or smaller. Anyway, I thought it would be fun to play around with some other colored waxes, maybe some crayons, tissue paper. So I'm going to test some of those out next and just see how they turn out. So that was a fun little experiment. This is one that I made with wax and the napkin, and this is the one that I just made with the Kleenex. You can tell they have a little bit different texture maybe, but they look very similar. These two I used tissue paper, and you probably could do this without even putting the wax on, but I do think it makes the paper a little more translucent. So it was just a fun experiment. These next two were the crayon experiments, and I don't know if you can see on this bird here, but it doesn't show up as much when there's a backing behind it, but the crayon didn't spread exactly evenly, so there's some spots that are a little heavier than others, but overall I think it looks pretty good. I was surprised that it didn't cover up the stamp more than it did. And then this one I mixed in some of the regular just clear wax or paraffin with the green, and I think it turned out really nice. They mixed together well, and it just kind of made it a little lighter, and it made the color spread out a little bit more. So I think if I was going to do it again, I would always mix the paraffin or clear candle wax a little bit with the crayons, but that was kind of a fun experiment. And this last one, I just used a colored candle, so it's kind of a maroon colored candle, and you can't really see the color much until you put it next to one of the white samples, and then you can really see the color come out on that one. So I hope you enjoyed today's quick project and that you'll have some fun experimenting with it on your own. Again, if you have never tried junk journaling, check out my tutorial series on getting started with junk journaling. Click the subscribe button if you haven't already joined my YouTube family, and if you'd like to receive the Upcycled Design Lab newsletter, check the description box for a place to sign up. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you back here soon in the lab for my next experiment.